This is Maximilian. No, this is Maximilian. And he makes $85,000 a month working on cars just like this. What most miss is Max's story of going from living in a mansion to losing his father at 12, going homeless in his 20s, and having a business partner that embezzled everything from his business.
He was abusive. He tried to kill me a few times. He embezzled all the money. He went to Mexico. To have all those things occur is pretty whoa.
With a story stranger than fiction, we're about to discover the mindset that helped Max overcome the biggest adversities in life.
How you grow up is really just more of a dictate of your parents' success or lack of. Remember, as anything in business, you make money when you buy it, not when you sell it.
The success myth that every entrepreneur falls for.
But there's people that make bank doing that.
Right. And at last, the secret to communication that gets everybody listening to you.
And that's the secret spice that you have. No one else has that.
All right, Max, give our viewers an understanding of what exactly you do here.
Well, ultimately, we're a unique shop of a culmination of everything from dealing with vintage vehicles to dealing with modern technology and servicing everyday cars as well. But the emphasis is dealing with European cars, but really higher end aspects.
How long have you been in business at this particular location?
Built this shop approximately, 15 years ago. It's been a long process, and we keep evolving and improving things.
All right, well, let's go check out the training room. That's where you train your employees.
Awesome.
All right. Follow you?
Sure.
All right. All right, Max, tell us a little bit about your childhood. What kind of environment did you grow up in? And, how did that influence who you are today?
So I grew up fairly affluently. I was blessed to have a lot of opportunities. Not necessarily the best childhood in many senses. My father suffered from alcoholism. He was never an angry person, but he took care of that. He stopped smoking, and then a year later he gets lung cancer. I didn't, at that point, really share a lot of commonalities with most of my peers because it was like, okay, whatever, I lost my father. And really, I became hyper engaged with cars, and it's jokingly I'd say auto therapy, And so
works.
I got my first car for $300 in a VW Beetle, and when I was 12, and just kept engaging more and more with cars. And from that, I would go door to door to detail cars, riding my bicycle, and I've always had to support my passion for cars. The cars were never given to me. I had to purchase them, so you have to earn money to enjoy that opportunity.
Appreciate you sharing some of the vulnerable things. So your dad's struggling with alcoholism. You lost your dad at 12. What other moments up until, your adult self that had an impact on you? Anything else that...
Oh, significant. Due to economics of my father passing and such, I wasn't really engaged with school, so I would get a lot of Fs and everything else. I didn't find a lot of rationale for learning some of the things and doing the homework. My purpose has always been cars. So I dropped out when I was in high school. Then I worked at a different automotive shop. Then my mother met my stepfather, and we wanted to do dismantling of Volkswagens and Audis. There's a market for that. He was a deplorable human being in the nicest way. He was abusive. He tried to kill me a few times. He embezzled all the money. He went to Mexico, had me and my mother evicted. And so then imagine waking up one day, you effectively don't have a job, you don't have a place to live, and you have someone that has effectively, in quite simple terms, said that they will kill you when they leave. So to have all those things occur is pretty whoa. So rented a small shop in town, and then from there I was able to leverage it and leverage it and leverage it to get a house, to leverage that to build a shop, and that's what life is about.
All right, so this is your official showroom then,
Yes.
right? I think out of all these cars here, because you've got the Porsche, you've got the Corvette, this thing looks the funnest, to be honest. What's in there? Is this
This is a 1200cc motor.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's hideously light.
Jeez. So you grew up prospectively in a pretty wealthy household, right? Family was doing well, you guys...
My bedroom was 1,000 square feet.
Wow.
I could hide motorcycles in the closet.
So how do you go from that, Max, to then being homeless?
Well, ultimately, how you grow up is really just more of a dictate of your parents' success or lack of. And so that really isn't you. So people say, oh, you grew up and you live in this house, you're rich. Like, no, parents did well. Not me. I'm not any part of that. And so people a lot of times identify with where they grow up. And that's really not them. That's just the starting point. So I think people should separate from what the genesis of their life is, because that's just circumstantial. So then becoming homeless, stepfather embezzled all the money and I had to start from zero, you know.
What are some, like the biggest lesson from that season in life would you say is?
I never want to be leveraged. Do everything by the book. If you do it legit, then no one can leverage you. Every cent you bring in, you report it, the taxes. So no one can someday come and say, well, you didn't pay taxes on this or do that. You don't have anything to worry if you do it by the book. In those situations, he was not transparent, and so I saw the negatives of that. It may take a little more effort to do it by the book, but at the end of the day, no one can come up and destroy everything you have.
All right, so this is the podcast area, huh?
Yes, and so ultimately we try to utilize as much space as possible. And so basically I set it up because I wanted to communicate to customers about their automobiles, and then really a lot of ideas and technology can be advanced if people are aware of it.
How did you build from scratch when you lost everything, and what were your startup costs? Take us back to those days.
So startup costs, I would say probably less than $5,000.
And how old were you when you consider it a startup at that point?
Probably like 28, but I actually had been working and doing things before since I was 12, you know, so we're talking about after everything sort of went sideways, that's would have been probably about 5,000. And you just keep leveraging it, and you keep investing, reinvesting. That's, you know, people would make fun of Jeff Bezos. I'm not putting me and him in the same boat, but a lot of, when he was starting,
his stories.
A lot of people looked at it and said, what a fool, you're reinvesting, when in reality,
Driving your Honda Accord.
no one's laughing at him now. No one's saying that was a bad business practice. So I think a lot of people think like, I'm gonna start a business and then I'll be fancy and I'll have all this and all this. No, you just gotta keep it humble, and you gotta keep pushing, because ultimately if you don't, you've sort of clipped your wings before you even started.
So for those that don't have money though, they can't really go to the bank. Where could we start these days? What would your advice be to them? Like specifically for car mechanics doing what you're doing. Is it pretty easy to start at home from your garage? Do you need a lot of money to get going?
I can give you a truth. I actually earned money selling sperm.
Wow.
Yeah. So I made like 5K doing that. So,
you got to do what you got to do, right? That's crazy.
For reals, yeah, you know.
So you really went out just to earn whatever ways money to...
I'm a mercenary, as long as it doesn't negatively affect people.
Right.
But that's a viable thing, you know.
What's your roadmap look like for starting from home? Like,
look for opportunity. There may be used equipment. You don't need everything new. Find the stuff on eBay. Find it on Facebook or anything like that. And you can really cut your costs down if you're not going to be fancy and you just need the bare things you need, you know. And I think a lot of people think that they have to get everything new and they have to have everything fancy. No, you can start out on the low end of the spectrum.
Speaking of resources, after more than a year in development, the UpFlip Academy is finally live. I won't spoil it for you. This may be the ultimate resource for starting and scaling a business. Don't believe me? Check out the link in the description below for yourself. You're not only doing ICE engines, which is really cool that because you're now pivoting to EV, right? We're going into 2025, 30, wherever this world's going to lead us to. So let's go check out where you charge the EVs, get some fresh air, and continue the conversation.
Awesome.
I'll follow you out, Max. As a business owner and content creator, managing your workflows is crucial. At UpFlip, we understand these challenges. Juggling contracts, admin work, shooting, editing, and collaborating, all while trying to minimize errors, can be draining. That's where Dropbox can help. Dropbox's Business and Business Plus plans revolutionize the game for creative and professional teams, providing built-in capabilities for tasks like sharing, reviewing footage, collecting video feedback, sending large files, and handling contract signing in one single solution. We are big fans of Replay, which streamlines the editing and review process for video projects like this one, allowing frame-by-frame feedback and eliminating the need for endless back and forth messages. This gives us so much time back and allows us to share more content for our audience to love. Meanwhile, Send and Track makes it easy to share files with clients. It gives insights like who's opened the files and how much time they've spent looking at them. This way, we can make smart decisions based on real data instead of guessing. This makes finalizing pitches and proposals so much easier using one dashboard. If you're a small business owner or part of a team, this is by far the best all-in-one solution to take control of your creative workflows. Click the link in the description below to learn more about Dropbox Business and Business Plus. What are some secrets that you could share with us and our audience about this referral business? Because that's basically what you have.
For sure.
People word of mouth talk about how great Maximilian Motorsports is. What does it boil down to?
Really, it's just a human connection. That's really what it is. Because if you have a level of trust and you have that dialogue, and you can be comfortable looking in the whites of someone's eyes and know that they're being genuine with you, then you aren't selling anything. You aren't having to convince anyone. You're providing statements of fact, and they know that to be true. You know, so fundamentally, the big thing is a human interaction. And that's the secret spice that you have. No one else has that. And so the more comfortable you are dealing with people and talking to them and engaging them, the more comfort you have. And we all go to a restaurant because we like the server, or get coffee from a certain place because we like the person. When you're at a certain economic threshold at the very bottom, it's all about price, and that's entirely what it is. When you get to a certain level, your decisions are based upon your interaction with the people and engage with someone that would be your friend. And this isn't a false thing. And again, it comes back to being knowledgeable about a variety of things. I've made some great friends through this experience, and that's a terrific thing.
All right, blitz time with Max. Max, first question, what is your philosophy on work-life balance?
Is there such a thing?
Is there such a thing? That's your answer?
You know, the fact of the matter is, as soon as I walk out the doors, the rest of it just disappears. But fundamentally, there's nothing car related, not even a picture of a car in the house.
All right, spend a day with any automotive legend, living or deceased. Who is it and why?
Boy, it would probably be Enzo Ferrari.
Awesome. All right, what's one piece of advice you'd give to your 12-year-old self?
You'll make it through it.
All right. If you weren't in this business, what else would you be in?
Ultimately, maybe architecture, potentially even acting.
Wow, okay. What's the first thing you do when you get to the workshop every morning?
I just start setting the schedule of what needs to occur and, grouping things into tasks that need to be done in priority.
In 3 words, how do you define success?
Being okay with the fact that you're imperfect and you're moving forward.
What's the most expensive purchase you've made for the shop?
Probably buying a Tesla.
What's the most expensive splurge on yourself other than cars?
Cars.
That's it. Tell us about your revenue in the initial years, and also tell us where you are today, maybe expected for 24.
I don't recall that. I am one of those guys that keep moving, but I can tell you there have been points that it's like, is there enough for payroll? Is there enough to pay the mortgage, where you're gathering pennies and putting them together, and you're stressing out about that, but you have to have enough faith that you'll make through it, you know? As a general rule, I've always just operated the business where there's no debt for the company.
Gotcha.
And so, you know, the only money that I owe is a little bit of a mortgage, and that's it. Everything's been paid for on the front side, and that makes it a lot easier so you don't get out of control. So if you run a lot of debt, then something gets sideways, you're in rough waters, and you're going to have a hard time unwinding that.
Where's your revenue for 24, or last year, and where will it be for 24?
We're looking at about at 24, probably about $1 million, which,
good
you know,
for you.
in the scheme of things, we don't have a lot of employees, and I never look at it as a money thing. As long as there's enough money, it's all about perfecting what you have going on, and that's the big thing. So money is a bearing, and it's a quantitative thing that many people use to reference how their success is, and that's great. But really, what is the infrastructure you've invested in? What will that net gain you? And how are you operating? Because there's a lot of people that have great revenue streams, but they're still upside down financially.
Right. Yeah, just because you're making $1 million doesn't mean you're actually taking.
Most people are goldfishes.
Yeah.
So if you give them $1 million, you'll spend $1.5 million. So, you know, you really have to have self-control and understanding what's going on. And you have to, you know, it's always said that you should have at least 3 to 6 months worth of money on hand.
Reserves, yeah.
In reserves.
Let's go jump into your Tesla.
Okay.
And check
Not
out.
buying the companies.
The companies.
I can say I don't own an electric vehicle.
That's right. You don't own EVs. It doesn't have manual too.
Correct. All right. Awesome.
Let's do it. Tesla time. Tell us about your day-to-day right now. Woo! Tesla instant torque. I love it. What's your day-to-day look like right now, Max, as opposed to when it was years ago?
You know, I try to be in the office by 4:30 in the morning because I'm dealing with items, you know, that are on the East Coast, or communicating with people, emails and so forth, and I'm not interrupted by the normal course of day-to-day. So
Right.
It allows me to, you know, really dive into it, set the schedules. I try to do some research. A lot of times I'll watch some educational videos and so forth. As the day progresses, we have a 7:30 meeting where we go over some key things that with all employees. We communicate about things, changes, updates, and so forth. And along with that, then we continue with the tasks. I mean, you know, it's
You actually perform service on cars as well yourself, or?
fundamentally what I do is I do diagnosis.
Gotcha.
So a lot of times I'll review tests and so forth, and I'll give my dissertation of what problems might be present, and then maybe continue the work orders so the technician can inspect further things. And you know, with experience, I don't necessarily have to lay hands on something, but it's knowing, you know, sort of case studies of what are common failures, or, you know, being able to extrapolate the information and what that may mean in a repair.
Gotcha. When do you call it a day? On average?
5:30, but you know, a lot of times there's secondary things, you know, taking
Gotcha.
care of the shop and everything else.
I mean, that's what you expect. You have your own shop to run, and
Well, you know, the old adage
no one will
is,
replace you.
correct, the old adage is you can work whenever you want as long as it's all the time.
Yeah. Guys, do you know that Max actually reached out to us? So if it wasn't for you supporting us, we wouldn't have great and amazing guests like Max who are reaching out and saying, hey, we want to be featured, we want to be collaborating, and so on. So thank you for supporting us. If you haven't already subscribed, take a quick second to like and hit that bell so that you don't miss any of our videos.
Gotta hit that bell.
Do it. Was there ever a time when you wanted to just give up in the business? You know, and how did you get through it? What pushed you through it?
I have daydreamed what the parallel life that I would have had if I hadn't been responsible. So here's the thing, to me, I take very personally. I'm responsible for 7 families. So it's not just about me. So I can't give up because I'm responsible for these people. And so there's no latitude. If it was just me, I've daydreamed of what the lack of responsibility would have been if I just worked for someone else. But I've not. I have to be responsible for many aspects of the employees' welfare, customers, and everything else. But with opportunity comes responsibility, and with responsibility comes opportunity.
You have so much passion for this, so I don't think there was a time when you just didn't all of a sudden stop liking cars, right?
No,
that never occurred.
So a lot of times people hit burnout, and so the great thing
that's different.
about any business is that you can morph it. So sometimes it's less about the cars, it's more about the people, and sometimes it's more about the business, and maybe it's more about systems in place. So you can sort of dabble and come back, and you know, so you're not just staring at the same thing all the time. And so, you know, whether it's expansion or whether it's, you know, learning new technology, whatever it is. So fortunately, it's a buffet that's not just one course. You can like, I'm going to try this a little bit, and that's the great thing about it.
Let's say our viewers want to get into the car flipping business today. Is vintage classic the way to go, more profitable, or the everyday car? Can you speak to that?
I would say fundamentally the knowledge of what you have about the product. Don't be an expert about everything because you're more vulnerable to a slight adjustment of what it is. Maybe you didn't know there's a prone problem with that year, or that option is worth a ton of money and the car without that option is worth nothing. So I would say over diversification will create a lack of knowledge. Think of it as a one-man band. You play a lot of instruments, but none of them really well. So it's better to be very narrow and very laser focused and be knowledge about it. You're going to have better success than the person that tries to be the expert about everything.
So it's not really classic, vintage, or everything. Just
know
pick
what
one of the others and focus on it.
There's people, like I would never touch an RV or I'd never touch a semi-truck, but there's people that make bank doing that. You know, motorcycles aren't my thing. You know, again, it's just a knowledge base.
All right, let's say someone is today in the same position that you were many years ago, no cash, no experience, just pure passion for cars. Where do they get started?
Engage yourself with people that do have the knowledge you have and just observe, you know, and be helpful and make that investment into yourself. So it may be, you know, someone that's involved with racing and you're like, hey, can I go to one of the races and help move tires around or something of that nature? There's always opportunity, whether it's going to car shows and talking to people and so forth. And really, even if it's a shop, it could be an opportunity to clean the floor. So I worked at Bayside Racing for a little bit when I was like 15 or 16. I asked if they needed someone to move parts around and mop the floor, and they're like, yeah, we could use someone. And then it got me exposed. You're convenient, you make yourself useful and eager. They're like, hey, here, we'll show you how this is done. Or can you put the decals on this car? Or can you do this? And then by being present and the opportunity of experience, you're going to have that occur. But you can't sit at home and wonder why people aren't knocking on your door.
Right. So according to our polls, over 50% of people are afraid to start a business because of fear of failure. So Max, what's your advice for them?
Here's the thing. You're born, you're going to die. You can't avoid that. So what's the worst thing that could happen? You could die. And you can't avoid that. If you don't try, you've already failed. I mean, it sounds trite. It sounds like the same happy bumper sticker that's been on in the back of everything. You're never prepared for it. You're never prepared to do anything in life 110%. Just roll with it the best you can do, and that opportunity will expand from itself. And if you fail, it's really just a preparation for the next opportunity. It really wasn't a failure. You learned and you were able to continue. So that's important. Don't look at it as a failure, look at it as an education. So then you can see a net value with it.
What is the most interesting car project flip that you've done that you can share with us?
You know, I've sold a fair amount of Porsches, and, you know, it's interesting. One of the most expensive ones I've sold, almost the price of a house, was through a FaceTime call. I didn't know the person, but the person knew of me, and the car wasn't even inspected. It was so easy that I thought that the guy was just, you know, shining me on.
Yeah.
Money was in escrow the next day. The car we sent off, and it was.
This is the car you worked on as well, or?
Yeah, I did just cleaned it up a little bit and so forth.
What was it? Just curious.
It was a slant nose Porsche 930. It was the last 60th made, one owner car.
Wow.
With all the options and so
special.
forth. So yeah, it had I think 12,000 miles on it or something.
That's cool. And you sold it for?
Touching on 300.
300,000. That's crazy.
Just with a phone call.
I want to go check out the other area of the showroom because you have your car up there, and I want to talk about it a little bit. Can we go check that out? So what is the most exciting project that you've got in the past or working on so far? Give us like everything you can about it.
That's a tough nut because I always live in the present, so I'm not retroactively like familiar. I sort of move on to the next thing.
Sense. Yeah. Give us today's project. And you had a Porsche there.
Yeah.
What is that going to cost the customer? And
probably $80,000 to $100,000. The parts are hideously expensive, and you know, if you're ever buying a car, this is something to think about. What did the car cost new? Even if it's depreciated, it's the replacement parts. That Aston Martin behind us was, I think, about $200,000, and it's worth maybe $150,000 now.
Wow.
The parts aren't discounted because suddenly it's only worth $35K. It's still a $200,000 car, so the parts are going to be based upon that. The complexity of serviceability is. So people get lulled in. I can get that Maserati, stay away from it, you know, because it's not worth anything, and you're going to be upside down before you even start because they're still selling the parts at a $150,000, $200,000 range, and the car's only worth so much. So if you do buy a project car, oh, that Maserati just needs a clutch. Well,
right. Good luck.
Yeah, you're going to be upside down before you start.
Do you feel like right now, today, many, many years into the business, you've kind of made it? Like, where's your inner person at with regards to success and money, and are you always...
My goal is never complete. I can always make the business better for the experience for the customer, for the employees, the efficiency of everything. There is no resting point. You never get to rest on your laurels. I'm thankful that I've evolved, but I'm nowhere where I want to be. I want to look to the future, and what I aspire to is another level, and I will never be done being the best I can be, and I'm okay with that. So many people like to mark something off the list, and I've hit at the apex of that. I'm never going to be there, and that's okay.
Well, I guess that transitions to the question I want to ask you guys, and that is, does money buy happiness? So drop your thoughts below to see if Max's answers later in the episode match up with yours. So I'm guessing when you splurge on cars.
Well,
that's pretty clear. So give us a quick tour of your collection, your own vehicles, and starting with this one.
This is a Mini Cooper, which is a really fun car, and right now I'm redoing the interior and so forth.
Okay, what's next? I'll follow you. Sorry, I'm intrigued by the little Mini.
You can see through here, there's a 69 Corvette, and it was pulled basically from a field when I started up. Mice blew out of the exhaust and everything. I've had to put a different motor and done some upgrades. It's about 750 horsepower. It's a big block with a supercharger and everything there as well.
When's the last time you take this out on the road?
Yeah, it's been a while because there's a few things. Of course, I wanted to convert it to a manual, so then I don't like automatics.
Okay.
So I call them slush boxes, you know. So made it. Yeah, I have a manual transmission for it. So that's what the swap is. So yes.
Go check out the other ones.
So I like BMW E24. So there's one here that's set up for racing and so forth. There's a street version up there as well, and so. Again, these were originally automatics, now they're manuals, and I have a supercharged M3 motor that I'm ready to put into this one, so it's a little faster, you know.
What's your beef with automatics? I know you call them slush pulls or something, but...
Real cars have 3 pedals.
Okay.
So we have, up here, we have a Lotus Esprit.
Gorgeous.
This is one of like only 200 made of this car. Interesting thing about the Lotus is that when my father was in the hospital and I was a kid, I had a little black Lotus with gold trim, and I'd ride it around, with my imagination, and that imprinted me. So later in life, I wanted to get one. So that was a really, great thing. We get imprinted. So as a kid, there was a TV series called Miami Vice. They actually had a replica Ferrari that they used in the show for the first 1 or 2 seasons, and that's what this is.
No way.
So this is actually based off a Corvette, and this is what they would use in the Miami Vice series.
Top comes down, works everything as usual. You have one of the most clean shops that I've ever seen. So talk to us about the systems that you have in place to keep it so, and anything else.
Well, really, it just takes a dedicated effort to keep things clean. That's a starting point. But if you have processes remove chaos. And, each car that comes in, there's a number that's associated with it. The parts incoming are in a bin with that said number. The work order has that number. Any parts that are removed go into one of the connexes in the tote with the number on it. If any parts are sent out, it has an associated number with it. So, a lot of times we deal with 2 of the same cars, and so we have to separate that. Another aspect of it as well is making sure that we've taken the time with vendors to organize any of the fasteners, things like that, and really just, it takes a lot of time. There's no substitute for organization, but when it's all said and done, it removes the stress from the experience and allows a better and more consistent product.
And it's not just you, right, Max? Like, your team obviously is on the same page as a company as a whole. Everybody keeps it organized, everybody keeps things clean. It reminds me of lean manufacturing, Kaizen. Is that something you've heard of before?
Yeah, and many of those practices we try to engage with, and of course we've had to tweak everything ourselves, actually working on a software for organization of it. I've started another company to do that, that's far more engaged, that allows you to operate with your phone and look at tools and have the information and everything else that's part of that.
Okay. If you guys haven't checked out Paul Akers, the interviews we've done with him about lean manufacturing, about Kaizen, Max knows about it, we know about it, you need to find out about it today, so check out those episodes. With over 3 decades in the business, you've got 78 reviews. They're phenomenal reviews, by the way, but the question I have is why so little? Let's talk about getting reviews, the importance of them. What does that look like for your business?
So really the reviews we get are word of mouth, and I haven't put a lot of emphasis on it. We've never advertised. We don't really do anything. It's the first time that we've been engaged to doing marketing, which is just pictures and videos and such. But in a small community or in an industry where there's few people that do the craft that you do, they're going to find out. A lot of times people come here and visit us before they bring a car.
Yeah, and develop that rapport.
For a lot of people, this is like their little baby, and you're not going to take your child to a daycare that just had good reviews. You're going to check it out and make sure it's vetted. I think also a lot of times people spend a lot of times on the external. You really should always be perfecting your craft, and that's a big thing. I'd rather take the time and make the shop a little more organized, that experience for the customer, than just reviews. You can always make this better.
The first will lead to the other.
Correct,
right?
Yeah. We've been blessed that we've never marketed, and word of mouth.
That's the best form of marketing.
And, we live in a rural area. You'll find that demographically, in terms of using different resources to find things, is generally 10 years behind. So it's interesting, the engagement with people is different if you look at the demographics of it than it is if you go to a large metropolitan city. But again, we deal with very niche stuff. People are going to do their research and they're going to find out, they're going to ask, they're going to see another car like that and so forth. So it is unique in that way. I always feel that it's better to dominate a small segment of market than have a bigger, a small section of a big market. You're less vulnerable.
That's a good tip.
You're less vulnerable because it's really going to be hard someone to edge in that really fine-toothed area. But if you're a one-size-fits-all, there's a ton of people that are going to just try to get into that market, and it's going to be very vulnerable to you retaining a large percentage of the customer base.
What can one make restoring, working on classic vintage cars?
Really, the limitation is upon the root vehicle you're starting with. So if you're starting with a vintage Ferrari, obviously you're going to make way more than the person restoring a Firebird. And so that's an aspect ratio of everything. But beyond that is that really having the knowledge of what costs are going to be incurred and staying away from some cars. You can get buried very quickly. So,
really? Like what?
Well, you could get a car
comes to mind?
If you get a car and you didn't thoroughly inspect it, it has rusty panels. You're done. Remember, as anything in business, you make money when you buy it, not when you sell it. If you pay too much for it on the front side, you're done.
What is the biggest myth about success, in your opinion?
that it instantly comes, that people are overnight success. Everything in your life is in preparation for the next moment, and I think so many people don't see value in things that seemingly were dead end. But you know, what you bring to the table is a culmination of your life, and there's probably some points in it that you're like, I learned this, but I'm never going to use it. But then later in life, you realize it was very useful. And so there is no overnight success, and that's okay. But don't get caught off guard thinking that there is and that you're not having it, because you know, everything is a step, and even something that didn't seem to net you anything significant is the foundation of your success.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, because we've heard it in other interviews too, where I just want to kind of emphasize this truth that whatever struggle you're going through, people see it as a permanent thing, for example, right? It's temporary.
Yes.
You'll get through it. It's a stepping stone. Like,
well, fundamentally, you need to look at the big picture of everything. So if you step back a little bit, it's not a permanent situation, and you really look at it, and then you'll be able to observe the benefit of it, the payout of it, that you may not be aware in the throes of it. So just hold on tight, do your best, and don't let go, and you'll see that there's a reward.
So you've spent some time with the head of Lamborghini, Jay Leno, Adam Carolla, right? How did you get these connections? How did you build these networks? What's your advice for entrepreneurs that need to go out and build a network?
I would say that it's just about putting yourself in a position where those opportunities occur. Don't be afraid to ask, and being gracious about it. There was an event that I was at, and I didn't have the credentials to enter into it, and I'm like, hey, can I just take a look at the cars that are in there? And the person, I was joking, like, it'd be awesome if you could do that because you're an awesome person. And they let me go in there, and I came back. I said, I'll just be there 5 minutes. They said, cool. I came back. I said, that was really awesome. Thank you very much. That'd be awesome if I could stay longer. And they're like, just stay. It's cool. And it was actually at a McLaren event where the head of McLaren was, where I met the head of Lamborghini. And I'm like, oh, it's the head of Lamborghini. I'm going to speak to you and engage in a conversation. And so those things occur with the opportunity and being able to utilize it, but be well-spoken and present well. The other last thing I'll say is be knowledgeable about a variety of tasks, so then you can communicate with anyone. So it's not always about your vocation, it's connecting on a human scale.
How do you price jobs, Max? I get auto mechanics that have this book, computer system, here's the hours it takes. I get that. Is there anything special, different about Maximilian Motorsports as far as job pricing?
Well, we use software, shopware is what it's called.
Yeah.
And we can look in historically instead of just grabbing from book time. And book time can be over or less. It really does. It's only as good as the information, and sometimes it's just a random number they've put in there. They're not inclusive of everything. So we have a database, we document each job, and then we can look back in there. What did that actually take for time? You know, and people aren't aware necessarily that you have to advance book time based upon the age of the vehicle, because it gets dirtier, rusty fasteners, things like that. You have to build into it. That was built, those estimates were given for brand new cars off the lot. So a lot of times, you know, it is an estimate, but there's communication with the customer that there's a deviation, something broke or this or that, and having constant communication with that is important. And then again, by having this database, we can actually see what it took us to do. In this state, you're only allowed 10% deviation from the original estimate without getting a reapproval.
Interesting.
So there's laws that really limit what you can change. You can't just call the person up and say, hey, it's $5 million more. So really, you know, having a good database, documentation, and being aware that those are estimates and you need to communicate with the customer.
Okay. With the projects you've done and are doing, you definitely stand out from other shops, auto shops. So the Maximilian Motorsports has got a pretty cool story to it. For those looking to get on their entrepreneurial journey, Max, what's your advice for identifying a business idea, a path to pursue? Maybe they're 12 years old, like you were with your first car. Maybe they're 18. Maybe they're a business person who's just not content in the business they're running. Like, share some insights on that.
You know, passion, you have to have it, and maybe they can self-generate it, and more you're skilled at something, you feel more excited about it, and then you get snowballs from there. But to find where there's a need, a lot of times there may be a need that you're not even aware that there is a need. You can find what that is if you ask people, because a lot of people, you know, they're content and you didn't realize you needed something until someone, oh, well, you can do this for me? Awesome. I want to do that. So really it's just engaging with people and connecting the dots. So, you know, a lot of times also is once you start momentum, let people know that you're doing that.
It's on you to let them know.
And you have to really be familiar with listening to what your community offers. Because you may love coffee, but there may be 18 coffee shops on the corner, and unless you bring something really crazy to it,
how do you stand out?
You're not going to be able to stand out. So you can still find your passion, but take it away from the saturated part so other people aren't involved with that in saturation.
Auto shops are definitely lucrative, but if you want more ideas, head over to UpFlip Podcast. With over 100 business ideas, you may just find the next $1 million business. You don't do a lot of digital marketing, so other than referrals, how do you get people through the door?
Well, again, this industry, you want to educate the customer that you're present, and it's not like a restaurant where you're going to go down that evening and utilize it. So really more guerrilla tactics in the sense that parades and things like that. I lend out a fair amount of cars that I have to shows, so customers or friends take them to shows. Also being engaged, we help with different charities and things like that. So, I MC local events for some charities and things like that. So, the real part is just being engaged with your community. Those things are all very important.
Yeah, people that invest a lot of money into social media and they do a lot of content creation, which is great, but they don't engage with community.
Correct.
I'm almost like, if you had the choice between one or the other, it's almost like engage with the community, because that's face to face.
At the end of the day, all you have to offer is you, human, and that human experience is not translated in an Instagram account. And
it isn't.
If someone's at a parade or a local event, they generally live in the area, but you could have a ton of followers that are millions of miles away, and that's not really helping this business. Now, maybe there's some businesses that would be very useful, but when someone looks in the whites of the eyes of another person, there's an engagement that digitally can never be achieved.
Right. Interested in the auto business but want to know how to get in with as little money as possible? Make sure to check out episode 115, where we do a deep dive into a 22-year-old's $50,000 a month detailing business. Thank you for watching. Take a second to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.